Hello, everybody. This is Catholic Dad, episode number 113. Let's get the microphone working. I've been reading the Gulag Archipelago, and I came across a quote in there, which was from a Soviet prisoner that used to room with Solzhenitsyn. And he says, "To stand up for truth is nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail." And this takes some bearing upon because, we in America, we think we're courageous when we stand up for truth and we scream and yell about things, or we throw our shoulders back and we verbally say whatever we want. We have some great liberty in this country, and I think we as Americans have to appreciate our constitutional rights of freedom of expression, because these are things that, although protected under the confines of law, they're not necessarily things that are here forever. And in fact, you do hear some people speaking about hate speech or political correctness speech, and that some people actually genuinely do believe that you should put confines on people's speech through persecution of the law. Now that takes some bearing upon in the book I'm reading. To stand up for truth is nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail. Now these people in Soviet Russia, for quietly whispering the truth to their friends and their families or associates, they got hauled away by cops and they got interrogated horribly, and then they got put in these Soviet death camps for speaking the truth. Now the thing is, in the interrogation you could have lied, or you could try to get your way out of it, but if you had moral integrity, you would stand up for what you believed in. You wouldn't sign the confession, and or you did sign the confession, you ended up in jail. But you ended up in jail for speaking the truth. And when you end up in jail and you stick by your convictions, that is when you know that you're being tested. And you're being tested to a limit of what you're willing to do for speaking the truth. Because that's actually a true courage. It's courageous to do such things. We in America, we think we're going to stand up and say what's right and just throw our shoulders back and speak. And when we speak, we have incredible protection in the law that we know if we speak, we're going to be protected under the law, that nobody could persecute us under it. But again, these things are transient. And I don't know if you ever heard of in Canada, which Canada, not that it's American law, but it is similar. They have English common law, and we're derived from that. But the first time in the history of English common law, they were trying to force people with the force of the law to talk about gender-neutral pronouns, and that preferred pronoun speech, that you had to, by law, by force of law, refer to somebody by their preferred pronoun. Let's think about that for a second. Because, we've had the freedom of expression and freedom of speech in British common law for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And then all of a sudden, this is going to be turned on its head due to these benevolent reasons, like these good-hearted reasons that we're protecting people's honor and their dignity and their feelings, and we're just trying to protect people and help them by coercing people to say things that they didn't necessarily agree with. Now, if you ask me, that's going back to the Stone Age, because in America, we could say whatever we want and we can have complete freedom of speech. But standing up for truth is nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail. And so what the Canadians were trying to do is use the long arm of the law, the force of the law, to actually punish people and for actually speaking the truth and speaking their mind. And this may not sound like a slippery slope, but gender-neutral pronouns, or whatever it was, preferred pronouns, they wanted to force people to refer to people in a pronoun that's not related to their gender based upon what the people wanted to refer to as. The freedom of expression is not to protect the people that's hearing the message. The freedom of the expression is to protect the people that are expressing the message. And you really have to think about that a little bit. If we actually create laws to protect people from hearing speech, then essentially that's not free speech anymore. That's free hearing. And then after that, it becomes essentially who gets to control the law about what you're about to say and what you're allowed to say. And so that takes some bearing upon. We in America have to really appreciate our free speech and our ability to be eloquent with it. I have a personal story, and it's never going to happen again to me. But I'm a radiologist, and I was giving a lecture at a med school to some first and second year med schools. I give anatomy lectures, and I was giving this lecture, and I was talking to the students, and I was giving some pelvic anatomy lecture, whatever it was, and I addressed the students, boys or girls, right? And so I said, okay, and, half the class here is girls, and when I said that, this professor in the front row, she said, "They're women," and so I was like, "Excuse me, what did you say to me?" And she said, "They're women," and I said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "You called them girls," and then I'm like, well, I didn't know that was offensive. But beyond that, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. I didn't know if that was offensive, but let's move on. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore, because the next time somebody says they're women or tries to correct my speech in the middle of a lecture that I give voluntarily, mind you, I travel to the med school campus, and I have to prepare this lecture. It's quite burdensome to me. And then to have some professors step up and say, you have to say the words that I want to hear. Yeah, that's not right. I've lived too many years on this planet to be told how to speak at my stage in life. I don't need to be told how to speak anymore. And if this woman, she's caught in her little politically correct trap, mind you, if you think about it, is they're women, she says. Well, how do you know they're women, right? Maybe their preferred pronoun is girls, or maybe they're not actually women. Maybe they identify as men. For that matter, I don't even know if you're a woman anymore, because frankly, we have all these preferred pronouns throughout society. And this woman, although she looked like a woman, maybe somewhat, how do I know she identified as a woman? Perhaps she wanted to be called a man. Perhaps she wanted a different pronoun. And so for her to step up and say they're women and try to teach me how to speak, she has no idea what these persons prefer to be called. Yet she knew what they preferred to be called, which actually means she's violating her own very rule of calling somebody something that they don't necessarily want to be called. So that's the problem with this Gordian knot of political correctness. That's the problem with this compelled speech law. That's the problem with trying to tell people what to say as they speak, because you can never predict what the receiving end is going to feel, because like 90% of anger is malperceived. It's like people get angry over nothing 90% of the time. 95% of the time, most things are people experience anger over absolutely the wrong reasons. And so this is another example of that. So the next time somebody steps up and tries to change my speech in the middle of my sentence, I'm going to say to them, I've been on this world entirely too long to be taught how to speak again. And so if you have something to tell me, you're going to tell me after this class. And oh, by the way, if you don't want to wait, then I'm going to ask you to leave. Because no, this is my lecture. I put it together, and I don't need you sitting here trying to intellectually bully me in my train of thought. And I'm actually a verbal thinker. I don't know if everybody else out there is, but whenever I speak, whenever I think, I have to think in words. And so sometimes I talk to myself. I'm driving along, putting together arguments in my head, and I actually verbalize what I'm going to say out loud. And that's how I actually express my thought. It's hard for me to just quietly think on my own, trying to figure problems out. I do much better when it's verbal. And so for these people that want to compel speech, the people that want to use the force of law to tell you how you have to refer to people, essentially what they want to do is use the force of law to tell you how you have to think. And that, my friend, to stand up for truth is nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail. That's exactly what they're trying to do to us. They're trying to tell us that if we perceive truth and we speak truth, that if we violate what their perception of truth is, or what their wanted perception is, then we have to sit in jail under the confines of the law. And you may say, oh, nobody's threatening anybody with jail. They're threatening people with the force of the law. And that is good enough, because as soon as they get power, as soon as they have the capacity to tell people how to think, and they control the judicial systems, or the justice systems, they will put you in jail if you resist enough. And so for truth, people, to speak truth, it's nothing. To stand up for truth, it's nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail. And so cherish your freedom of speech, cherish your freedom of expression. And by the way, when people step up to you and they tell you how you have to think in the middle of a lecture, stand up to them and say, I've been on this planet entirely too long to be taught how to speak again. No, we're not going to talk about this now. I'm not done with my line of thought. Thank you very much. And so this is Catholic Dad making you think about things. And, God bless. Get to Mass. Pray the Daily Rosary. Share, like, or subscribe. And again, I'm going to repeat one more time. To stand up for truth is nothing. For truth, you have to sit in jail. Think about how much integrity you have to go that far to stand up against the law when the law is trying to compel you to think things or have correct speech. It's coming to America, people. I don't know if you know it, but if people are strong enough and they stand up and they cut it off at the pass, we might be able to preserve some of this thing called liberty and freedom that founded this nation, and liberty and freedom, so that we can actually express ourselves without the fear of sitting in jail. God bless you. Thank you. Have a good night.